Hi there, Larry Seitz here in Larry City, Missouri. Today is May 26th, 2023. As those of you that know me or have watched the videos I did previously documenting my run for city council, you know came in second out of three. So, you know, I didn't win, obviously. But before that, I was involved in the groups up above here. I'll talk about those more later. And before I do that, I'd like you to imagine, if you will, what the North American continent would be like if, starting in the 1500s, it had not been discovered and occupied by a top-down, exclusively controlled organization or set of governments from the European continent that were only interested group of elites that were only interested in power over the masses for their profit and who were willing to use any brutal force that they found necessary to exercise that control. So instead of that group coming here, those groups, what if the North American continent had been discovered and populated by peace-loving groups willing to fairly exchange their advanced technologies, iron smelting, for example, and domesticated animals, for example, cows, goats, and horses, and other advanced knowledge. What if they had been willing to fairly exchange that in return for access to the land? What would the place look like? Anyway, at that time when they first started coming over here, many, if not most, of the North American Indian tribes exercised three prehistoric freedoms: the freedom to move, the freedom to disobey, and the freedom to create or recreate their social orders. They also exercised basically truth, freedom, health. They had the freedom to investigate. They were advanced scientifically, just as advanced as the Europeans at that time. They had the freedom to investigate their environment, to understand and take advantage of it without destroying it. And they had the time to um, find the truth about plants and animals and their uses, benefits, and so forth. And via that, they were able to maintain their health and live in a healthy environment. They were basically egalitarian in their uh, social contracts, and that included the local to Missouri, the uh, Osage Indians who exercised those freedoms. The Osage Indians actually sent a delegation to Paris at some time. It was probably a decade or two later than that, to explain their social order here, because the Europeans couldn't believe that they were intelligent or that they could uh, exercise debate and logic in order to discuss and develop their social order. But just imagine, if you would, what would North America look like today if these two cultures had been both of the same truth, health, freedom uh, mindset, if they had cooperated to advance the knowledge of truth, health, and freedom and the natural order and advanced scientific knowledge, if they had done those things to benefit both groups rather than justify extermination of the locals in order to take over the land to extract the resources from it for the benefit of the few in Europe. But anyway, let's jump ahead to that. Didn't happen, but I guess it's still not too late. By the 1800s, the Europeans had industrialized most of North America, or the populated areas at that time, and for their profit through manufacturing and selling goods. And they did so at the lowest cost. So they didn't pay the people very much. They had horrible working conditions, long hours, child labor, hot, dusty, especially in the mines. And as a result, well, they also lived in squalid conditions. They didn't have uh, clean running water or sewers. And as a result of those poor working conditions, long hours, and so forth, uh, they had poor health overall, and there was a lot of diseases. So by the late 1800s, those groups started organizing bottom up, I guess you could call them unions, to strike for better working conditions. And in fact, in the late, late 1800s, 4 U.S. workers were hanged for striking for better working conditions, specifically an 8-hour day. Most people don't know it, but that's International Workers' Day worldwide except the U.S., and it's on May 1st. Now it's called Law Day or something like that. It's been changed so that we don't understand the history. But anyway, all those strikes, working people were able to get better working hours, better working conditions, better sanitation. And by the um, early 1900s, most of the diseases had been virtually eliminated before any vaccines were implemented. So, going ahead, by the 50s, apparently it was costing the elite too much of their profits to provide these benefits. And so, in the past, centuries ago, when they had these kind of problems, they would just kill people. You know, people complain, they just kill them. But in the 50s, they started using a different approach. And it was kind of a psychological approach. And what they did was both parties, the Democrats and Republicans, took a position to stop all this advancement, all these strikes. The Democrats got the unions. They put in top down union organizations and, basically picked the union bosses. And they were able to cut back on the strikes and focus on single issue things like, a few cents increase in wages and not allow the workers to strike for greater freedoms, uh, better working conditions, um, better living conditions in the city, and so forth. But in addition to the Democrats taking over the unionization, the Republicans demonized any working group supporters and tarred them as some kind of a communist plan or sympathizers or so forth. And they tried to make, or I guess they did make for the most part, working groups organizing synonymous with communism. And they demonized communism and they tarred anybody who supported working groups. There were entertainers at that time who supported the people that supported them by going to their movies and so forth. They supported people and they felt they should have better working conditions and they got tarred as communists. In the 50s was the start of the destruction not only of the unions, but of the family farms. I lived through that. I was born in 1948, and by the end of the 50s, things had just really changed. My grandparents had a smokehouse, had all the equipment to process milk. My grandmother had a big chicken house. She sold eggs. by the end of the 50s, all that was gone. They had a big orchard. My parents built a smokehouse, but they never did use it. I remember them having a milk cow and hogs, as well as some cattle and row crops. And by the end of the 50s, they didn't have the cow, they didn't have the hogs, they never used the smokehouse that they built. And also during that time, I think is when they started stressing the people in general with attacking all the areas of our economy and life. And my grandfather, he died of what they called hardening of the arteries then, and I think it was from the stress of having all the stuff happen to the farms. And I'm not sure, but he may have been in World War One, and that's a stress-causing thing. War is. Now we've got the internet, and we have more information available to us and more organizing and so forth, at least until recently when they've censored all that stuff and made everybody uh, try to toe the line of what the government idea of things is. But they're using even more sophisticated psyops now. And they use what's called the not so obvious establishment, which are these people that they put up like Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Elon Musk. Elon Musk is a government person that makes his living off of his income from government for SpaceX. He's got a bunch of subsidies on that. Tesla, it only was made profitable through the sale of carbon credits, at people's expense. And then the Twitter deal, because that is classified as a platform rather than a publisher, it gets like a 10 times valuation for the stock versus 2 for publishers. And the reason is they have government protection, platforms do, from suits over somebody saying something they don't like, if they like they do in publishers. If they publish something that is not true, they can get censored or they can get sued. But Trump was one of those that actually supported the building of the CISA infrastructure, which is the basic thing that allows Twitter and the other social medias to hide censorship from government officials into the systems, which result in individuals, citizens being deplatformed and censored, basically. And they're probably going to continue on doing that, whereas more people use their cell phones for everything, they will legalize that, like they did back with the telephone recording with the telephone companies. That was totally illegal. I remember seeing those guys on TV, including John Brennan, saying that they did not record people, and in fact they did. Well, they have been censoring people, and they're going to use protection of the kids and TikTok is evil, and to justify that censorship portal where government can silently censor people if they don't like what they say. Okay, so I didn't really write out what to do here, but so again, I'm part of the Truth, Freedom, Health movement, and we support Dr. Shiva for president in 2024, and I'm going to start talking more about that in my videos. And in fact, in this one, I'm going to put a link to his most recent town hall, which is about, I have to remember now, the economy and how people can learn how to thrive and prosper using some simple financial tools, financial knowledge about budgets and so forth. And that same knowledge can be used by individuals to hold their local governments accountable. In fact, here in Larry City, we have the annual budget review coming up. I believe it's on June 13th. It's a Tuesday at 6 o'clock. And I'm going to be asking questions like, are they going to budget more for a police officer and or a building inspector so that we can get the town cleaned up with the existing ordinances that we have? And also, since we didn't have a police officer for the last year, what happened to that money? We budgeted for it. Where did it go? So those are the kinds of things I invite people to join me at the Larry City Council budget meeting. Comes up on, I believe it's the 13th. It's a Tuesday. It's the week before the normal third Tuesday city council meeting. So I invite you to come and find out the answer to some of those questions, hopefully. And look forward to you looking at more of my videos. I'm going to be posting stuff from the Truth Freedom Health and Dr. Shiva into my it's called the community section of my YouTube video. So I invite everybody to take a look, make comments on my presentation. I'm learning, and I look forward to talking to you in the future. Bye now.